Hey there, it's Lenny Magill with the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop right here in San Diego, California. And I have a tool that I want to show you that's really important, although you'll only use it once or twice in your entire life. But without it, it's very difficult to do what we're about to do. But first, I've got a quiz for you. I've got a question for you, and I don't want you to cheat. If I asked you how many parts are inside the Glock, how many parts make up a Glock handgun, what would be your answer? Don't cheat right now, just give me an answer. Okay? If you said 36, you're right. Okay, now let's think about that for a second. Because it's kind of a trick question. There are 36 parts as it stands right here, but the magazine accounts for 5 of them. There is the magazine body, the base plate, the insert plate, the spring, and the follower. So there's 5 parts. So in essence, if you said 31, you're kind of right. Now, that's kind of a trick question. Here it's 36, here it's 31. If you were a purist, you could say, well, inside the Glock, how many parts are inside the Glock or make up the Glock? You could say, well, I mean, you take the sights off, there's 1, 2, so that takes me down to 29. And the frame itself could be 28, and the slide itself could be 27. So I've actually heard people say, well, there's 27 parts inside the Glock. Counting the slide and the frame, there'd be 29, sights 31, and then the cost of the magazine, 5 more is 36. So there are the answers to that cocktail question that you can throw around the room a little bit. But what we're going to do now is talk about a part, one of the parts, one of those 36 parts that is very rarely discussed, and many people don't even know it exists. It's called the channel liner, okay? And this is it right here. All right, and the channel liner does exactly what it says. It lines the channel that holds the firing pin assembly, okay? So, we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's show you how to get there real quick. Okay, here's our Glock, magazine's out. Pull the slide back, it is in fact empty. Pull the trigger in a safe direction. Every time I handle the gun, I'm gonna do that same procedure. And I recommend you do it too. There's no ammunition on this table. There's really no ammunition in this room. I don't have a loaded magazine sitting close to me where I could inadvertently load it and rack it and shoot it and go bang, okay? So be careful not to have any ammunition in your premise when you're working on your guns, especially in the cleaning and disassembly process. Because most people say, well, I didn't know it was loaded. Of course you didn't. Okay, so pull down the takedown lever on either side is gonna allow me to take the slide off or to field strip the gun. So I'm gonna go ahead and disengage the slide just a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch, actually taking pressure off of that slide lock, and it's pull down on both sides with my fingernails, hold down, let the slide go forward, making sure it doesn't slide off by itself and hit the table or hit the floor because it could bend that little nose ring out there, which is not a good thing because it's kind of hard to bend it back. That's the upper, okay? That's what we're gonna work on today, is we're gonna work on the upper. This is the lower or frame. Upper is a slide, lower is a frame, okay? So one or the other, you can always refer to them interchangeable, but usually people say the upper and the lower because that's how they go together. I'll put the upper, or excuse me, the lower away. And now I'm gonna go ahead and take, and to get to this channel liner, keeping in mind that it lives about right here. Make sure I put it in the right way. Lives about right here on the slide. Let me show you right here. So it's gonna live right there. Oh, you can't really see that, can you? But now you can. So there it is. It lives about right here because it lines the channel in which the firing pin travels. All right, so I'll take a punch, simple punch, and I'm going to come underneath here. I'm gonna lift up the firing pin lug, and down below there, you can see it very good on this camera picture right here. Right there is the little piece of plastic, and that is not the channel liner, that's actually a spacer sleeve. Okay, and the spacer sleeve is part of the firing pin assembly. So to take the slide cover plate off, I've got to depress the spacer sleeve. You see it's spring loaded? Okay, that spring is actually the firing pin spring. So I depress it to take the spring pressure off of that slide cover plate. And as I push down, then I can just thumb the slide cover plate off with my thumb, just that easy. And here it comes down. I want to be careful to keep my thumb over top of that because there's some parts in there that could fly away. That is one of those 36 parts. It's a slide cover plate. And it's now disassembled. Inside, you're going to see two different things. One is the firing pin assembly. Okay? And that's an assembly because there's many parts here. And I'll go ahead and look at them real quick. We have the actual firing pin itself, the spring cups. Now again, there are two parts to these spring cups, but they only count as one part. So if you're really a purist, you could say, hey, there's 37 parts because there's two of those. But in reality, there's only 36 because that's one part, although it breaks in half. So those cups come together and they actually hold the spring. They capture the spring on the striker. And then they actually, when you take it apart, they split apart. I've got other videos on that. I'm not going to do that today. But again, we're going to talk about the spring cups, the actual firing pin spring or striker spring. And this is that spacer sleeve we talked about. And this is the firing pin. That's the firing pin lug. And that's what intersects with the trigger bar. And that's what makes the gun go bang. It gets pulled back and then springs forward. So there's your spacer sleeve. And that has a purpose too, to actually give it space so it can travel inside there. It's pretty ingenious. And one other thing to notice too, if you'll notice how the spacer sleeve has kind of got that round half moon. Well, look on the bottom side of the this slide cover plate and see how it intersects there. That's why you have to take pressure. You have to push this down. Again, it's kind of hard to do when it's not in the gun. But you push this down a little bit to get it off of here, which allows you to push this off. If you don't push the spacer sleeve down a little bit, it's basically impossible to get it off. I mean, you can do it, but you have to scratch at it and gnaw at it and pry it off. And a lot of people have done that, and then they have to replace this. Well, you don't have to, but they do because it looks all nasty and ugly. So if you see that all, scored up and scratched up, you know that they really didn't understand how to take the gun apart. But now you do. You don't have to do that. Okay, so now I'll show you one other part here. I'm not going to take it out. This is the Extractor Plunger Depressor Assembly. Okay, so that extractor plunger depressor, so it depresses down on the extractor, pushes down with the spring pressure. That's what keeps that spring pressure, so when it grabs the shell, it pulls it out, spits it out, and then it grabs another one and kind of springs back and forth. That's what that's all about. Another very important part. It's crazy how small these little things are, and they all come together to add there. But now let's talk about that channel liner, okay? Because that's what this video is about. It's about a channel liner and the channel liner tool. Inside of this channel, and you can see the hole. Let's see here. Let me get a little light on there. That hole right there. Inside that channel, sitting down here at about yay, is this channel liner. And the only way to get it out and get it in is with a channel liner tool. Now, when I say the only way, it means really the smart way to do it. You can certainly go in there and pry it out with some kind of hook like this, okay? It's not very pleasant. You can get in there and yank on it and claw it out. It's ugly, nasty. Not a good idea because, well, no matter what, when you take this out, it's not going to be used again. Okay, this is the channel line. When you put it in, you have to be careful when you put it in to make sure, one, that it goes in the right way, and two, that you don't damage it when you put it in. And that's what this tool is all about. Okay, this is a dual-purpose channel liner tool. And we make these right here in our machine shop. Okay, you can see this well thought out because it has a couple features that you may not find on some other ones. First of all, it's dual purpose. You have an installation side and a removal side. So let's look at that real quick. Okay, that's just a a threaded 3/16" thread. Okay, threaded piece that actually is going to bite that channel liner. So when we stick this in here, we basically are going to screw it right into the channel liner. I'm not going to do this one because I'll ruin it, okay? So when I go down inside here, and I actually put this in there, it marries itself up perfectly. You can see that. And then I screw it on, and I actually bite into the plastic. I get it down there about halfway, maybe even 3/4 way, and then I pull it out. That's really the best way to pull it out. Really impossible to do it any other way. Now, it's not easy too, okay? So it'll take a little bit of muscle. So if you'll notice, one of the things we did on our dual purpose channel liner tool is we put a hole. And the reason I put that hole there, so you could take like an Allen wrench like so, put it through like so, and now you have something to hold on to. Because again, sometimes you get that in there and pulling it off is very difficult. Oftentimes, my gunsmiths I'll see in their room, they'll put the slide in a vise, very carefully though, not to squeeze it too much. They'll put it in a vise, and they'll actually get this in there, and they'll be yanking on it with all their, their weight. And these are big dudes, they're 200 some odd pounders, so they are, and they have to struggle to get them out because it's a very, very, very tight fit. It is a press fit that gets this thing in there. So that's how you take it out. You use the removal side. You actually stand the slide up or put it in a vise, get in there, drop this thing in there, kind of fits perfectly, okay, right there, and you start to screw it in. Okay, again, I don't need to do that on this gun because it's brand new, but that's the technique. You screw it in, and again, you can, if you have trouble screwing it in, you can also do the same thing right here with this. Yank, yank, yank. Okay, that's why we have the hole there. Get it hit about 3/4 down there, and then just yank it out. Out comes your channel liner. Boom, throw it away. It's not going to be used again. Replace it with a new channel liner. And here's what's really important, is there is a forward side and a back side. And it's pretty easy to tell when you get in here close and look. So if you come in here close, you're going to see this has a small bevel on it. And I don't know if the camera can really pick it up, but I think you can see that little beveled edge right there. See how the light's kicking off that thing? Other side is flat, and it will have a little tab on it. And there you can see that tab right there. That's kind of where they tore it off. But that's the telltale sign that that's the side you want to install. And also, it fits on the channel liner perfectly. On the other side, it kind of goes on, but it's a little tighter. So we want to make sure we use the side that does not have the beveled edge. Now think about why this edge is beveled. It's beveled around there because it's going into that channel, and it needs to kind of, go in there and kind of fit. It kind of slides itself in. It's plastic on the steel, so the plastic will collapse a little bit. It'll be just compressed, but it is super tight. And I'm going to put one in just a second. And then before we do that, well, notice this. This is how this fits. The channel liner goes over top the spring like that. So that's basically how it works, right about there. And that's what it looks like inside the gun when it sits here about yay. So, a couple things. One, you don't want to have any oil inside of the channel liner. You really don't want to have any oil inside this whole mechanism, because the oil and the tight, and notice how tight this is, right? Any kind of fluid, especially oil, will start to have some pneumatic pressure. And if this thing starts to move a little bit, right? And then all of a sudden you can now imagine what's going to happen. It will start to build up some pressure and possibly prevent it from having freedom of movement, as well as it'll attract gunk and grime. And that gunk and grime will also interfere with the motion or the movement of this piece. So we run this dry on the inside, dry on the spring, dry on the channel liner. We really don't want any oil inside that channel for the channel liner. So be careful. And don't think, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and lubricate this part and it'll be better. It won't be better. It will actually cause problems. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about the installation, because this is a little dicey in a sense that you just have to know kind of what you're looking for and what you're expecting to hear. Again, there's a front side, and that's the beveled side of the channel liner. And you can typically see the bevel. I can see it, and I hope you can too. I can see just the way the light is glancing off it. Our dual-purpose channel liner tool is a super tight fit onto the channel liner. And really super tight. The other thing you're going to notice is that we built in a little shelf here, or should I say shoulder, that captures the channel liner in the right spot. And by the right spot, well, you'll notice again, if you look up top here, you're going to see how we have a little bit of space between the edge of the channel liner and the bottom of the channel liner tool, or the top of the channel liner tool. That allows you to insert it into the channel liner, the channel itself, and have it kind of squeeze down. Now, as you push it down, it's a tight fit. So you have to kind of use a hammer on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it into one of our slides. Let me show you this. This is our moto slide, okay? Just got off our machine shop. I think it's been, ready to go out for finishing, okay? It's pretty cool. These are some of the slides we actually produce. These are pretty awesome. And this is the moto cut. We've got 6 or 7 or 8 different cuts. Just happened to grab this one. I always like this one though, kind of like the way it looks. So we're gonna put this up on its nose, and I'm gonna take my channel liner and my channel liner tool, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing started here into the actual channel. And again, make sure it's there. And I can actually, feel it go in, okay? And I can kind of push it down a little bit. And now, I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to tap it down. Looks like it started well. Now what I like to do is just, you're going to hear, when it bottoms out, you're going to hear a sound difference. Hear it? It's a little different, not quite so hollow. Kind of like when you're going, looking for a stud in a wall, dot, 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 dot. Yeah, there's the stud, dot, 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 dot. The same thing here. All of a sudden now, it's a little bit more solid. Okay, so it's basically fully unseated. Now I can come down here and look. I want to make sure I don't see any of the channel liner right there. So it's fully seated. And I also felt it fully seat itself. Now I don't want to pound on it too much because I don't want to crush that little piece down there, but I feel it's in there. And now I'm just going to pull this tool straight up. And voila. And voila. Channel liner's in there. You can kind of see it now. Okay, when you look in there, it's really difficult. I don't think you're going to be able to see it in the camera, but I'm going to point it there. And it's one of those things where it's just, you can't really see it. That's why most people don't know it's there. It's the one hidden part that's inside of every Glock, and your Glock will not work without it, because that blade won't center itself up properly. And I guess Glock, in his wisdom, realized that the spring did not want to ride metal to metal, so he put a piece of plastic in there. And it's just one of those, $3 or $4 items that make the Glock work better than without. So that's the installation process. I showed you some of the disassembly or removal. When you pull it out, you just throw them away and buy another one. We sell those by the thousands. I mean, I've always had channel liners. I will always have channel liners. If you need a channel liner, call us. But you certainly are going to need a channel liner tool. This is our dual purpose channel liner tool. Okay, remember, the removal side and the installation side. Now, to be honest, you can use any kind of like 3/16 inch lag bolt. But the installation is the other side. So you might as well just buy the tool, because it can last you really forever. You can use it to give it to your friends. They can bring it back. And it's something that should be in everybody's toolbox if you're going to be working on your Glock. Now, why would you remove the channel liner? That's the last question, okay? Well, you don't ever really have to. And so unless you are to refinish, or you're doing some machining, or somehow this thing gets damaged, which is really rare. I don't ever see them get damaged, but whenever we do work on these guns and we refinish them, they get damaged. And we do machine work on there, and all kinds of oils get in there, and all kinds of stuff happens, and it heats up a little bit with the friction of the metals. It's time to replace it. So we pull them out and we put new ones in. Of course, when we make our new slides, they come with no channel liner. We have to install the channel liner, so we use our channel liner tool. But rarely do I see a need for you to replace it unless you're doing some kind of custom work. But then again, that's why you have these great tools. And that's why we make these great tools. And that's why we are the GlockStore. Thanks for watching. I'm Lenny Magill. We hope to see you next time here on the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop YouTube channel.